Get ready, because today we're breaking down the most insane episode of One Piece ever. If you thought Marineford was intense, wait until you see what went down on Egghead in chapter 1145. This episode literally has everything. Kuma delivering the most devastating punch in history, Luffy showing why he's the sun god, the 5 Gorosei turning into monsters, Vegapunk broadcasting the transmission that will change the world, and the giant warriors joining the party. So grab some popcorn, sit back comfortably, because we're going on an emotional roller coaster that will last over 20 minutes. And heads up, if you're not ready to see Saturn getting the beating of his life. Let's get to the main event, the most complete and thrilling analysis you've ever seen of this masterpiece of an episode. The Straw Hat crew managed to team up with the giant warriors to try to escape the hell that Egghead had become. But of course, the Gorosei weren't going to let that slide. These guys are more persistent than Sanji chasing beautiful women. On Egghead, Bonnie comes out completely shattered from the Forbidden Memory Room, carrying the full weight of Kuma's memories. Vegapunk was sadder than Brook, realizing that milk doesn't make bones grow back because he had broken the promise he made to the girl's father. Until just a few minutes before, Bonnie wanted to decapitate the old scientist, but now she returned to her child form to hug Grandpa and apologize. That's more mood swings than Chopper seeing cotton candy. After that, she asked him to extend his hand and gives him a gift that Kuma had kept for 10 years, a sapphire sun-shaped necklace. The girl was radiant because it reminded her of Nika, her hero, and Kuma, the legendary sun god. Vegapunk asks, who could have imagined that kid would become something like this? Man, if he knew Luffy was going to literally become a god, he would have asked for an autograph at their first meeting. Bonnie asks if Luffy is the son of Kuma's best friend, and Vegapunk admits even he was shocked when the two arrived together. He recounts everything that happened while she was immersed in her father's memories, and a lot happened during those 6 flashback episodes. Finally, we return to the present, where things are hotter than Ace's hell. Bonnie was literally in the hands of the damn Saturn, screaming that it was all his fault, the man responsible for making her father suffer and lose all humanity. The soldiers aimed their weapons at the girl, and Sanji was angrier than when someone wastes food because he couldn't move. And he wasn't the only one. Luffy and Frankie were also paralyzed by the Gorosei's power. Luffy was weaker than a fish out of water, begging for a tiny piece of meat. Anything would do. Atlas said he would get him food, but she also couldn't move because of the power of those old men. The Marine soldiers reported that they captured Vegapunk's bodyguard Sentomaru was more beaten up than Zoro after being lost for a week. Even Kizaru was lying on the ground, unable to move. Looking into Bonnie's eyes, Saturn coldly declared that her father was deader than Brook's jokes. No offense, yo-ho-ho-ho. The Marine HQ wanted to understand what the hell was going on, but ordinary soldiers weren't authorized. Only those with the rank of Commodore or higher could enter the island. That's more exclusive than Sanji's all blue. In the Frozen Kingdom, which definitely doesn't need more ice, the residents read the newspapers in disbelief that the new Yonkou had taken Vegapunk hostage. It was practically impossible for this to end without bloodshed. Elsewhere, people wondered if Egghead was more surrounded than a celestial dragon in Sabaody, worried about Dr. Vegapunk's fate. At the Revolutionary Army base, Dragon asked where Kuma would go if he had control of his body. Sabo replied that if it were him, he'd attack Maria Joie without thinking twice, but Kuma certainly had a different destination in mind. Saturn decided it was time for Bonnie to meet her father in the other world. The soldiers prepared to shoot, and everyone went into total panic, more tension than Usopp in a fight. But Bonnie told Saturn to screw off and said that if she was going to die, she would take him with her. She used a distorted future of Nika that even surprised Saturn. Those giant arms went after him, but the attack failed completely. It didn't even tickle. The bastard started squeezing her even harder, explaining that she only knew Nika's name because she was Kuma's daughter, but had no idea what it really meant. He said she was too dumb to connect Nika with the transformed version of the Straw Hat. Down below, Luffy was stuffing himself like there was no tomorrow, eating even the toys that came with his meal, more ravenous than when he discovered meat exists. Saturn asked who gave him food, and the soldiers denied it. The old man ordered Kairoseki shackles put on him immediately, but it was already too late. Up above, Bonnie tried everything but couldn't even change the Gorosei's age. He revealed that he had been the one to give her that power in experiment to see if they could give powers to a baby using Akumanomi extract. The age fruit was a success, but it had no real value. The true power was the ability to transform into any possible future version of herself. Saturn mocked her for believing Nika was real, but she shouted that he was real and that she had been searching for him ever since her father became a cyborg. Saturn said she was getting weak proof that he was starting to doubt Nika's existence. He revealed that her father also believed in that nonsense and wanted to save people like Nika, as if he weren't cursed enough already. The worst part, he confessed that he was the one who experimented with drugs on her mother. Needless to say, the experiment was a total failure. Bonnie's heart started racing uncontrollably, like it could stop at any moment. Suddenly, something that looked like a meteor fell onto the island, creating a gust of wind so strong it sent soldiers flying and knocked down entire trees. Bonnie kept crying, screaming that it was all Saturn's fault. Vegapunk was furious, asking if it had all been one of his experiments. He couldn't believe that this bastard offered a deal to save Kuma's daughter, like he was doing her a favor when he was the one who caused all of it. Saturn told him to put himself in his place and asked if he cared about the feelings of mere insects, stomping the ground and saying there was no point in caring about trash, more despicable than Spandau. On the other side of that meteor was Bonnie's real father. The Marines asked if it was a pacifista, but realized it wasn't. This one had paws on his hands. It was the authentic Bartolomeo Kuma. He fired an Ursa shock that instantly destroyed an entire building. A soldier reported that the southeast coast of Egghead was under attack by the former Shichibukai Bartolomeo Kuma, and the authority chip no longer worked. Everyone was stunned, and Vegapunk asked why Kuma was there. Saturn said there was nothing to fear because it was impossible for Kuma to be there. Yeah, right, you arrogant fool. This bastard needed to feel true terror. Bonnie was so scared she couldn't even hear properly. Doberman ordered fire on Kuma to stop him from reaching the center of the island. They shot cannonballs at his back, but the man didn't give up. He kept running through the crossfire without stopping for anything. He was almost falling, but then he heard Bonnie's cries and drew strength from the impossible to keep going. He was like a war tank, knocking down anyone in his path. Saturn said Bonnie was extremely annoying and decided to finish her off for good. He ordered shots at her, and the paralyzed soldiers screamed to stop, but Kuma finally arrived, targeting the weapons and blowing up anyone who threatened his daughter's life. Saturn threw Bonnie to the ground like trash. She apologized, saying that even after all of Kuma's efforts to save her, she was still going to die. Saturn raised that disgusting leg to destroy her, but Kuma arrived just in time, blocking the attack with his own back. He stepped in to protect Bonnie, who didn't know whether to cry or hug him. Saturn couldn't believe what he was seeing. He ripped Kuma's claws off and attacked again, but the man caught him in midair and even knocked the Gorosei's cane down. Vegapunk asked how this was possible, since Kuma was supposed to be dead. Kuma looked at Saturn and remembered all the misery he had caused, enslaving families, losing almost everyone he loved. Yet he was still alive to fight for the only person he could protect. Saturn explained that Kuma should have been minced meat because as soon as the Revolutionary Army rescued him, they activated the self-destruct button. But as they could see, he was very much alive. Kuma threw a punch, gathering a lifetime of accumulated hatred. A single punch, so powerful it sent Saturn flying far away. Everyone's jaws dropped, and Bonnie couldn't stop crying. The punch was so devastating, it hurled Saturn across the island, knocking down multiple buildings that crushed him like pudding. People couldn't believe it. The Marines even less so, because he had just punched one of the highest authorities in the world. It made Luffy's punch on a celestial dragon look like child's play. After that, Kuma fell to his knees. The soldiers ran to rescue Saturn. Bonnie kept crying, and Luffy finally managed to move. They ran to get Bonnie, but Sanji asked them to stop. Kuma was immobilized, but he could still move toward his daughter. The worst part was Sanji realizing he might have trouble now, seeing that Bonnie was really just a child. Kuma hugged her, and Frankie was competing with the girl to see who could cry more. 2 human waterfalls. Vegapunk couldn't understand anything, because he had installed a self-destruct device in Kuma. Once activated, he should have been like a vegetable, and even science couldn't explain it. He said it wasn't physical strength that made the Buccaneer special, it was something much greater. On the other side, Kizaru was finally getting up, and a battered Sentomaru was happy that Kuma had made it. But the soldiers panicked because they couldn't find Saturn anywhere and didn't know how to report that he had escaped. After that, Kuma was completely shut down. Bonnie thanked him for everything he had done. She knew it all because she had seen his memories, every sad and happy moment he had experienced. With tears in her eyes, she said she was so happy to see him again. She told him that her mother had been an amazing woman who always supported him and would fight anyone who messed with him. He had been foolish foolish to reject Ginny when she proposed, but it was for her own good. Bonnie knew that Kuma never stopped thinking about her, not for a single second. She knew he had written numerous letters to her that never arrived because of the world government. He shared everything he did while traveling the world, was amazed by Vegapunk's inventions, and couldn't wait to go on adventures with her. The girl hugged him, saying that even if everyone called him a tyrant, he was the kindest person in the world, and she would never forget that. Meanwhile, the Marines were trying to dig up Saturn, who began releasing an energy so monstrous it sent everyone flying. People were in shock because they thought the Gorosei had become history, but he emerged in spider form and landed like a Marvel hero, though he was far from heroic. His arm had been torn off and couldn't even regenerate properly. He asked Vegapunk if it was him who did that, but the old man said it was the power of love. Saturn said it was nothing but a mistake and began regenerating horn, polished an arm as good as new. Sanji asked how his body regenerated so fast. Now renewed, Saturn said he no longer needed Kuma and launched his claws at him again. Sanji arrived with a kick to stop the old bearded man. Frankie shouted that Kuma had helped them many times and prepared a laser beam to blow the bastard up, but Kizaru got up, saying they had grown a lot. The robot pierced Saturn and sent him to hell, but Borsalino appeared behind him, wanting to show how strong he had become, delivering a flying kick that slammed him into the ground like pigeon droppings. Bonnie said Kuma wasn't moving, and Vegapunk asked Atlas to carry him to the laboratory. She carried him on her back, and the scientists said to leave Saturn to him. They needed to take care of Bonnie and Kuma. Kizaru asked if they were going to let them escape, but Saturn didn't care. Vegapunk called him a coward for not having the courage to finish him, and even called him Borsalino, recalling when they used to have fun as best friends. On the ship, Doberman heard Saturn's order to punish anyone who defied the world government. In other words, he was calling for nothing less than a buster call. The island was declared a threat to the government and would receive the destruction call to wipe everything out. This time, they didn't even have to wait for the ships to arrive. They were already surrounding Egghead, ready to burn it down until not a single soul remained. Vegapunk panicked upon hearing about the Buster Call. Saturn declared that those who study the secrets of the world, who carry the blood of lost races, and who awakened an ancient god must be completely obliterated. The Buster Call was finally activated. Vegapunk begged Saturn to withdraw the order because the island represented the future of humanity. The Marines ran desperately to evacuate and wanted to know what was happening in the center to cause such madness. The crew fled with Kuma on Atlas's back. Vegapunk kept insisting, but York interrupted, asking Saturn, Kizaru, and the ships to leave because it was going to get dangerous. The Horned Man said they would stay until preparations were complete. He ordered the bombardment to begin, and York told Kizaru to leave if he didn't want to end up like a pancake. Vegapunk asked if they couldn't solve everything by just killing him, since the island held the most incredible scientific discoveries, and destroying it would wipe out 100 years of scientific progress. He begged Kizaru, who could barely look him in the eye. Saturn asked if he was still hiding anything else, and said they didn't need that progress. Vegapunk begged again for humanity's sake, but the bastard said he forgot to mention the ship that escaped yesterday. He had already ordered soldiers to chase and destroy it, just in case someone knew about the Void Century. To make sure no one survived, he sent a warship to tear them to pieces. Vegapunk was furious because they were innocent and didn't know anything, but Saturn said they were accomplices, just like the people of Ohara, who broke the law and got what they deserved. That's why everyone along with the island deserved to be erased. The ships were almost all ready and prepared to fire. Luffy took the opportunity to escape using the vacuum rocket, while Vegapunk distracted the enemies. Bonnie asked what would happen to Vegapunk, but Sanji told her not to worry because he would get the old man. He contacted Nami to check on things and explained that Saturn had called a buster call. Chopper and Usopp were desperate, saying they couldn't handle another destruction call. Imagine Robin, who was about to face her third, having survived one at the age of 8. Chopper told her to keep resting, and Nami asked if Luffy was down there. Sanji didn't know where he was, but assumed he was fine. Zoro was still fighting Rob Lucci, and Jinbei went to help so the swordsman wouldn't get lost on the way back. The problem was that they could no longer use the Vega Force to reach the sea, since it had been destroyed by Kizaru. Nami said that Brook had an idea to escape. The skeleton was grinning from ear to ear, saying that carrying the ship over land was a piece of cake. He called himself a genius because he had frozen the clouds to make the ship slide. But Nami asked how they were going to stop the ship, and Brook froze, taking a huge hit when he admitted he hadn't thought that part through. She screamed that they would plummet if they didn't do something. The ships kept surrounding the island, and Doberman said the barrier was still standing. He ordered the vessels to destroy the central factory and the city of Egghead. Finally, the terrifying Buster Call began. It was gunfire, explosions, and bombs everywhere. The city started being completely obliterated. Luffy continued stuffing his face, eating like a hippopotamus. The soldiers asked if it was the Straw Hat and ordered the Yonkou arrested, but they were hit by cannonballs before they could do anything. The bombs kept coming, and the soldiers shouted for everyone to wait because they hadn't escaped yet. To make things worse, there were also Pacifistas firing laser beams that left the city completely ablaze. Vegapunk could only watch the disaster unfold before his eyes, unable to believe that all his efforts were being wasted. He could do nothing. The future of humanity was doomed, and his dreams were destroyed. Saturn ordered Kizaru to do what he had to do. Holding back his tears, he walked toward Vegapunk to execute his friend. Sanji arrived, asking what the hell Vegapunk was still doing there. The Atlas crew was fleeing with the vacuum rocket, but their happiness was short-lived. Kizaru appeared beside them and lashed out with a light whip that split the tubes in half. Everyone was sent flying, and Sanji charged at full speed, yelling that he was going to save Bonnie. The rest could fend for themselves. Saturn ordered the Pacifistas to attack Bonnie and Kuma, preparing missiles to exterminate them both. But the Pacifistas recognized Bonnie and hesitated. The real Kuma hugged Bonnie in midair, and Saturn said it was ironic. Kuma had sacrificed himself to save Bonnie, and now his own clone was going to kill her. He said it was a fitting end for these insects. Vegapunk watched Bonnie falling and said that when he learned she had become a pirate, he had shivered because he knew a horrible future awaited her. There could come a time when Pacifistas with her father's face would be ordered to shoot her. Outside, the Marines failed to destroy the fleeing researchers. Their ships were completely obliterated. In their final moments, one of them warned Kizaru that someone was heading straight for Egghead. The city was being destroyed when suddenly a 3D effect hit the anime that almost blew up the screen. The Marines aimed their weapons at Luffy, and he told them to try their luck if they thought they could handle it. The boy started snoring like a motor and had a super digestion that restored his body instantly. Frankie already wanted to learn the technique to eat so much without gaining weight, wondering where all the food had gone. Suddenly, the bombs started landing where they were. Luffy grinned as the guys were engulfed by flames. They asked where the Straw Hat was and only heard laughter along with the drums of liberation. The Marine said that even as a Yonkou he was outnumbered. The three planned to restrain him with Karoseki, but before finishing, the ground began shaking like a trampoline. It threw everyone into the air, and they came face to face with the kid doing a ghost cosplay. He threw all the white powder on his hair. He was jumping around like a 5-year-old, and the soldiers who had been brave took the chance to get out of there. On the ships, they kept firing cannonballs at the island, and the CGI switching between 3D and 2D was unbearable. In the center, Vegapunk saw the crew falling from the sky like pigeon droppings. He called Atlas, ordering her to save Bonnie and Kuma. The rest could fend for themselves. Saturn commanded the Pacifistas to fire on the two, and Sanji kept rising in slow motion to save the girl. Atlas reached Bonnie and told her to listen carefully. The girl made a strange face, but followed the instructions, turned to the Pacifistas, and ordered them not to shoot and to help escape the island. No one understood anything, and the soldiers on the coast said they heard something. After that, the Pacifistas simply obeyed and turned their lasers on the Marine ships. The battle literally flipped in 5 seconds now. All the Marine weapons were turned against themselves. They fired beams that destroyed the ships, and the 3D scene almost broke the screen. Vegapunk was relieved it worked. One by one, all the vessels started being destroyed. The old man explained that his only fear was Bonnie being turned to dust by her own father, and he simply could not allow that under any circumstances. That's why he programmed all the Kuma Pacifista clones to obey Bonnie's orders with authority chips even stronger than the highest authorities in the world, the Gorosei themselves. That way, Kuma was always on her side. After that, he was stabbed in the back with Saturn's claws. He tried to cosplay Ace with a hole in his stomach, but Saturn was cross-eyed and only hit his chest. Everyone went crazy, and Saturn ordered Kizaru to eliminate them all immediately. Borsalino teleported and unleashed a rain of bullets that left them like a sieve full of holes. Sanji shot up at the Admiral with a flying kick, but he dodged and said he was going to cut the two in half. He told Bonnie not to worry because it would be quick and wouldn't hurt at all. The cook activated turbo mode, but it was too late. They only heard an evil laugh and a giant punch coming to smash Kizaru like a bullet train. The Lantern Boy kissed the ground, and Luffy retracted his arm. The kid is so ridiculous, he landed that hit from the ground while bouncing like a flea, saying that now, with a full belly, he was going to use 100% of his strength. He turned the whole island into a giant bouncing playground that wouldn't stop dancing. Saturn didn't understand anything because the ground felt like jelly, and the boy was hopping from side to side like a little frog. People fell from above, but instead of smashing into the ground, they were unharmed. They were still right in front of the boss, who had just ordered Vegapunk to take a nap. The soldiers were so distracted by the bouncing island that they even forgot they were being bombarded. Kizaru got up from that hit, and Bonnie ran to the old apple-headed man. She was relieved he was still breathing and yelled for them to run, but Saturn told them not to bother wasting time because the fate of insects was always the same. Suddenly, they began to hear a beat that left everyone in shock. Luffy turned on his JBL, and it started playing a sinister tune that could have woken Joyboy from his 200-year nap. Bonnie heard that music and immediately remembered the Nika dance her father taught her, the same one they used to dance together every night. Kuma used to say that one day Nika would show up grinning and shaking it. Vegapunk asked if she still hadn't realized, but he wasn't sure himself until he saw it with his own eyes. The same straw hat Luffy Kuma protected so fiercely was none other than Nika, the sun god. When Bonnie saw the kid strike that pose, she had no doubts left. She started crying because Kuma had been right all along. Vegapunk said the Buster Call wouldn't help because for many centuries, people around the world had been waiting for him. Meanwhile, a huge ship was approaching Egghead. The Navy ships were going down one after another with nothing they could do. The lookout on the mast warned that something was coming, but it wasn't a pacifista. They came upon an enormous vessel and sent word to all troops. The shields and Viking banners erased all doubt. Everyone thought they'd been gone for more than 100 years, but this ship was huge because its crew were even huger. They were about to run over the Navy forces, who gathered to rain bombs down on them, but the ones getting hurt were the cannonballs. They didn't even scratch the ship. They asked what the hell the giants were doing here. From above leapt none other than the giant warriors Dory and Brogy to play seesaw and send soldiers flying. They drew their weapons and destroyed warships like little toy boats. Brogy said they came for the straw hat, and Dory was eager to see the sun god. Now the real brawl was about to start. The sailors ran in terror when they saw the giants. Brogy swung his axe into the ground, tossing men up like toys. The two leapt onto Egghead, shouting that they had come for the straw hat. Their comrades arrived right after, trampling the Navy and boarding the island. They told them to take care of the annoying ships around the island. Oimo and Keishi took command and charge, destroying ships like toy boats. The Navy soldiers wondered why all these ancient giant warriors were on the island. They tried to fire cannonballs to stop them, but another ship was wiped out before it could do anything. The warriors sliced warships one after another, turning into a nightmare for every unit. Up in the clouds, Usopp saw the giants and shouted that his masters had arrived, but at that size, he didn't even need binoculars to see them. He worried he might never see them again, even if they all went to Elbaf. They remembered when the whole world feared the giant pirates, but the group split because of a quarrel between Captains Dory and Brogy. The Straw Hats ran into them on Little Garden during that dispute, which had dragged on so long they had forgotten why it started. There, Usopp said he wanted to be a brave sea warrior like them. Oimo and Keishi had met them when they were gate guards at Eni's lobby. Now everyone was reunited on Egghead to help people escape this hell. Nami couldn't believe they had such powerful allies and said they must have come after reading the news. Now everyone prepared to run. Nami asked where Brook was, but all she heard were shouts for Lilith. The skeleton told her to stay calm, that he was already on his way with the ship, very chill, and still not thinking about how to stop the boat. Lilith screamed that if they fell off the island, they'd hit the barrier and explode. Meanwhile, Zoro was fighting to the death with Rob Lucci, and Jinbei was flying in like a manatee to help the swordsman. Zoro told the cat to stop messing around because he was in a hurry, but the bastard said only the winner could say that. He lunged again with sharp claws, claiming he'd heard the swordsman was a burden and slowing his crew down. Zoro dodged a strike and defended himself against that lunatic who was dying to cut someone. Lucci said they were a bunch of idiots who couldn't abandon any crew member, so as long as the bushy-haired one was breathing, the Straw Hats would be stuck there. But that logic was completely wrong. If by some miracle they managed to kill Zoro, the Straw Hats would challenge even the devil to get revenge. Down below, more than 30 Navy ships had already been sunk. Vice Admiral Red King ordered the small and medium ships to fall back, leaving only the warships to advance. He ordered fire on the Pacifistas, but couldn't believe they had to attack their own weapons. Meanwhile, in the forest, two sinister maniacs, Van Augur and Katarina Devon, were wandering around as if nothing was happening, thinking about how to spice up the fight even more. In the center, Bonnie couldn't believe what she was seeing. Luffy asked why she was crying like a baby, but she said it was obvious. She had been searching for him all this time. Luffy asked if she had hit her head because he had been with her the whole time, but she explained she didn't know he was Nika. The kid had no idea what she was talking about. She told him she always wanted to throw rubber punches like him. Then he remembered that embarrassing moment when she tried a weak punch on Saturn. She yelled that she wanted to see real punches since he was the big shot, and told him to punch the old bearded man in the face to get back at him for Vegapunk. Luffy didn't understand a thing, and his eyes practically popped out when he saw the scientist fallen on the ground with a hole in his chest. Saturn said these insects deserve nothing but death, but Luffy completely disagreed.